night since we had daylight savings time, and so it's it's now fully dark. Like last week when we were starting to come together for Shabbat services, it was just getting dark, but now we are beginning our Shabbat service in darkness, in actual darkness. But that's, I don't know, there's something kind of meaningful too, because I think that Shabbat challenges us then to bring light into our world, for us to be that light. We learn in the prophets that we're supposed to be a light unto the nations of the world, Shabbat Shalom. And so for us to be that light and bring and shine it into the world is always a great thing. A couple of you are in the Intro Judaism class I teach, and a couple of nights ago we turned off, or last night I guess it was, we turned off the lights, and I turned on just my flashlight on my phone, and we got to see how that one tiny light was able to put light in every corner. It's kind of what we do during Hanukkah as well, which is coming up, but that's also what we get to do with our Shabbat candles every single week, especially when times are at their darkest. So let's be that light, and let's find some light in being with each other. And I'm happy I wasn't here last week. I was at a wedding of one of my cousins, and a couple weeks earlier I was at bar mitzvah for another cousin, and now I'm happy to say that, barring any unforeseen circumstances, that I will be here every Friday for like the next 3 months. I can't think of a Friday I'm missing, so that makes me happy. So so it's nice to be with my community, and let's sing about how nice it is to be together, page 128. You'll have to sing with me tonight. Cantor isn't able to be here tonight, so please join in with me. Top of page 128. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. We'll turn now to page 142 to sing about the Shabbat coming in and being a Shabbat of peace, and we sing in particular about angels being here in Shabbat. Now, this week in the Torah portion, we have this message. I'll be talking about this in my sermon tomorrow, about Jacob seeing angels going up and down a ladder in his dream. You've probably heard of this story. And what are angels exactly? Well, some commentators say that they are kind of like people, but that they're here to praise God and make our world a happier place. And others say, like Maimonides says, no, angels are simply ideas that God sends to us that gives us intelligence, that gives us thoughtfulness, and so many other things. So regardless of what an angel might or might not be, it's something peaceful and beautiful that we can strive to emulate. So let's bring in that peace when we sing Shalom Lechem. I'll just say also that the root of the word for angel is the same as the word for a messenger. So let's be messengers out into the world and make our world a better place. Page 142. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech malachei hamelachim hakadosh baruch hu. Boachem leshalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei hamelachim hakadosh baruch hu. Bahuni leshalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei hamelachim hakadosh baruch hu. Seitem Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We'll turn to page 138, and we will celebrate Shabbat being together. It's almost like being at a wedding, a coming together, a joyful occasion. Let's sing together. Lecha dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabelah Lecha dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabelah Shamor bezachor bedibor echad Hishmianu el hamilchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shemo tiferet belitila Lehadodi likrat kala yalai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabelah Lehadodi likrat kala yalai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabelah Likrat Shabbat lehuvenelcha Ki hi mekor haberacha Merosh mikedem nesucha Sof maaseh b'machshvatila Lehadodi likrat kala yalai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabelah Lehadodi likrat kala yalai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabelah. Verse 5, Hitoreri, Hitoreri, Kiva oreku mi ori, Uri, Uri, Shir daberi, Kevod Adonai, alaich nigla, Lehadodi likrat kala yalai yalai yalai, Pnei Shabbat nekabelah Lehadodi likrat kala yalai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabelah. We rise and face the entrance to greet Shabbat. Boi v'shalom ateret bala Gam besimcha ub'zohala Toch emunei am segula Boi chala Lehadodi likrat kala yalai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabelah Lehadodi likrat kala yalai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabelah. Now that we've greeted Shabbat, let's take a moment to wish each other Shabbat Shalom, maybe introduce yourself to somebody, and great to have you all here tonight. So I'll say Shabbat Shalom to a couple folks too, and then in a moment we'll resume with the lighting of our Shabbat candles. Sadikata Mahar Yifrach Ke'erez Bavanon Yizkei Shetulim Mibet Adonai Bechatzrot Eloheinu Yafrihu Oynu Vum B'Seva B'Shenim V'Ranim Yehu Lagid Ki Yashar Adonai Tzuri Tzuri Velo Avadavo. We will, at this time, bring light physically into our lives this Shabbat with the lighting of the Shabbat candles. Will you join in with me? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. We turn to page 146 and rise for our call to worship, the Baruch Hu. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai lai lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai. Baruch et Adonai, Hamevorah. Baruch Adonai, Hamevorah. Hamevorah le'olam va'ed. Hamevorah, Hamevorah le'olam va'ed. You may be seated. Page 149, let's read at the top of the page. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide and time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai Hamariv Aravim. Page 150, Ava Olam, a reminder to us that God finds beauty in us as a people. And that's what I think of often. I love this prayer because, I think that when we look at Jewish history, there have been so many times that people haven't seen beauty in us as a people. And to have moments where we validate ourselves and say, let's remind ourselves that God finds us beautiful and that God has love for us. That's something that it's important for us to do. We're so good at loving our neighbor, we have to remember also to love ourselves too. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Avta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadita, Otanu limadita. Aken Adonai Eloheinu b'shachbenu, ufkumenu nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu, ve'orech yameinu, ubahem negei yomam v'layla, negei yomam v'layla, ve'avcha tasir, mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael, Ohev Amo Yisrael, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uletecha v'derech u'shochbecha u'kumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafa ben einecha u'chtatam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim le'olechem Ani Adonai Elohim, Asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lahem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohim, Adonai Elohim, Amen. When we look at how our people were slaves in Egypt, like what it means to be a slave in general is for someone to see you not as a person, as a commodity, and not to really see beauty or potential in you either. And that's for hundreds of years how we existed. And then it was with the freeing of our people from Egypt, with the parting of the sea, that all of a sudden they saw beauty in themselves because somebody else saw beauty in them and recognized beauty in them, and that was God. And so we cried out, who is like you, Adonai our God? And whereas nobody is like God, that's kind of the point, is nobody's like God. We do read in the beginning of the Torah that we're all made in God's image and likeness. And so finding moments for us to recognize holiness in ourselves and see godliness and holiness and beauty in others is, I think, the epitome of what our faith teaches and how we are supposed to practice our Judaism and make the world, therefore, a more beautiful place. Let's join together, page 158. Mi hamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilo osefele, nora tehilot osefele, malchutecha ra'uvanecha, b'hokei ayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Se'eli anu ve'amru, Se'eli anu ve'amru, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Page 160. Or how about 161? Let's do an English reading, and you can join in with me. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukkot shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. 162. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Beni uvein b'nei Yisrael oti leolam, oti leolam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Ki sheshe yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. 164, we rise. Anananananana Adonai, ananananana svatai tiftach, ananananana ufi yagid teilatecha, ananananana Adonai, ananananana svatai tiftach, ananananana ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Hasei Avot v'Imaot, U'Mevi Gila Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah. 168. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol atah Rav Le'oshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechokel Ha'im Behesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim, U'Matir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, U'Midom Melach, Melech Memi, U'Mechaye, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, V'Ne'eman Atah L'Chachayot HaKol, Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shim hakadosh, v'kadoshim b'chol yom yihallelu chasela. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. You can continue silently through page 181, or you can use this as an opportunity for your own prayers and reflections, and when you're finished, you may be seated. Ose shalom bimromav uyase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Ose shalom bimromav uyase shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. We turn to page 371 and turn our thoughts to those who are in need of healing of the mind, body, and spirit. With our prayer for healing, the Mishaberach. And this week we think of these loved ones and members of our community: Avraham Shlomo ben Yochanan V'Simcha, Kitolea bat Masha Hana, Barbara Arnovitz, Maureen Berry, Ariana Berenson, Kevin Bernstein, Denise Dobling, David Dowsett, Genevieve Ellsworth, Shulamit Marguerite Shlomeris Epstein, Yitzhak Figelski, Will Goldman, Susan Horn, Sharon Katz, Patrick Koziol, Jeffrey W. Levy, Mary Jane Levy Dixon, Megan Magleby, Shari Pedersen, Ina Sable, Andrew Santoyo, Penny Spector, Linda Stern, and Judy Wolf. If you have a name to add, when I look in your direction, I invite you to share that name with us. Again? Alex? Chase? Pete? And if you are joining us at home or wherever you are watching from, I invite you to share a name as well. Our prayer for healing is on page 371. Mi sheberach avotenu mekor habraha imotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habraha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom. One of the easiest things I've noticed for people to do is to focus on the appearances of others and have that be kind of, it's way easier for me to look at somebody and come up with a judgment than it is for me to have a conversation and to think about what they're saying and to process it. If I can simply judge a book by its cover, then I don't have to read the book, right? That's what that means. And when we do this, as we know, sometimes we miss things of substance. Like, this was really evident to me during the 2016 presidential mudslinging that was what they called a campaign and election back then, where I remember then candidate Donald Trump was on a dais with other Republicans who were running for president. And he was making comments such as Little Marco and Low Energy Jeb, and pointing at Carly Fiorina and saying, making comments about how ugly she looked, basically. Like, do you want a face like that as our president? And also took shots at Senator Ted Cruz's wife's physical appearance as well. And when he was doing this, like, people would laugh and they would applaud and they would join in the name calling and such. And what it did was deflect from his opponent's messages and arguments and qualifications and so on and so forth, so that people could poke fun at the way they look and eliminate another candidate based on something that was not of substance. And as I said, too often, just in general, this is our process for how we decide things and choose people and judge others or judge things. And we even kind of see that reflected in the Torah this week, because we have this story that many of us have heard of a love story between Jacob and Rachel. And with Jacob's father, Isaac, he was looking for a wife who was, as beautiful on the inside as she was on the outside, and had a wife chosen for him because of the way that Rebekah treated other folks, the way that she treated Abraham's servant Eliezer, saying, hey, can I offer you water, and may I offer your camel water, and may I give you a place to stay, and does your camel need a place to sleep? And Eliezer saw that Rebekah was such a beautiful person on the inside that he said, this is who Isaac should marry. Well, with Rachel, it doesn't get quite into that level of depth. Basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, the Torah is like, well, what did Jacob like about Rachel? And the answer is basically, he thought she was super hot. That's like what's in the Torah, basically. Like it says in the Torah, that she had this beautiful complexion and this beautiful face, and that when he saw her, he immediately went up and kissed her and said, I'm going to marry this woman, and that was the entire courtship there. And then he says to Laban, I want to marry your daughter, the really, really, really good-looking one, Rachel. And we might know how this story goes, that Jacob then works for 7 years. This is what Laban says. You need to work for 7 years to marry Rachel. And after 7 years, his 7 years are up, he goes and he gets married, and he wakes up in the morning. And what happened? It wasn't Rachel. Who was it? Oh, a bunch of, come on, Hebrew school dropouts here. Come on. Leah, Rachel's sister. And he is not happy. He's like, I want the really, really good-looking sister. That's Rachel. And Laban says, well, you got to work for another 7 years, and then you can marry Rachel. And from this, we might get the most romantic verse in the whole Torah that says that Jacob worked another 7 years, but they felt like a period of days for him because of how much he loved Rachel. So Leah, though, like I said, we get this whole physical description of Rachel and how beautiful she is. What does it say in the Torah about Leah? What it says about her is she has very dull eyes. That's the I know, hold on. That's the description that we have for Leah. Not that she's beautiful, but that she has dull eyes. And this is really interesting because the Torah generally doesn't get into, doesn't go down that path of saying negative things about the way people look. And here we have one of our matriarchs, Leah, and it's saying that he wasn't so into her because she had dull eyes. But what the commentator Rashi says is we need to look at why her eyes were dull. It's kind of like somebody loses their temper, gets upset or whatever with you. Sometimes we need to say, hey, what's going on in your life? Why'd you react that way? Maybe there's more to the story that we don't know. And what Rashi says is that her eyes were dull because she'd been crying. She'd been crying because she felt that she was often overlooked because she was sisters with Rachel. And that she really wanted a family, and she knew that she had a lot to offer as a wife and a mother, but people hadn't given her that chance. And so she would spend her days praying and meditating and being thoughtful and sensitive and being in touch with her emotions and feelings. And as a result, this is why her eyes maybe were a bit puffier or seemed tired or whatever it might be, was because she'd been doing these things that are really beautiful, wonderful qualities that go so much deeper than surface level. And so, Rachel had poise and charisma and beauty, but Leah was contemplative, meditative, sensitive, thoughtful, and deeply connected to prayer. And there's even a midrash, which is a story outside of what's in the Torah, that explains something. Because after they get married, we read that Leah had no problems getting pregnant and having babies and so on and so forth, and in particular boys. And sorry for the sexism, but 3,000 years ago, you wanted to have boys carry on the family tribe and to inherit and so on and so forth. And she had boy after boy after boy after boy. She had 6 boys, while her sister Rachel couldn't get pregnant. And there's a midrash that teaches that she was pregnant yet again for the 7th time. And the thought of her having another son, when Rachel couldn't have any, was so devastating to her that she prayed to God, please don't let this be a son. Please let me have a daughter. And this is where we get Dinah. from this story, that God heard her prayer and gave her a daughter, Dinah, because she was being thoughtful and considerate of her sister Rachel. This is the type of woman she was. Well, anyways, what these commentaries in Midrashim teach us is there's often more than just meets the eye. We might glimpse at something, it might look more attractive than something else. But what this story is teaching us is that we must be challenged to look beyond surface level at something and really get to know somebody or something else, and to look for the beauty in it and to seek out that beauty. And there's so many things out there that at first glance, because it's different, we might think it's ugly, but later we come to appreciate how beautiful it is. Another example from the Bible is that the prophet Samuel was told by God, go find the next king, the future king of the people of Israel. And Samuel looked all over Bethlehem looking for this boy, and every single young man he would go up to that was like strapping and strong and good looking and all these things, God would say, that's not the right one. And eventually, Samuel stumbled upon Jesse, who had 7 sons. And each of the first 6 sons he met, they were strong, good-looking, tall, powerful. And God kept saying, no, 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 none of them. And eventually, there was only one son left who had been out in the field, and he came in and he was scrawny and not as good-looking as the other ones, and Samuel wasn't even going to ask. And God said, that one. Samuel said, that one? You're joking, that one? And God said, yes, that's David. David will be the greatest king that the people of Israel will ever know. And sure enough, Goliath, of course, laughed when he saw David. This guy can't beat me. But David had intelligence and depth and things that were able to overpower Goliath. There are a million examples like this. Taking it outside of the Bible, there is the example of the metal asparagus. Does anybody know what the metal asparagus is? Anybody ever heard of the metal asparagus? What if I said the Eiffel Tower? Have you ever heard of the Eiffel Tower? It was nicknamed the metal asparagus by Parisians because they thought it was the ugliest thing they had ever seen. And they said, this monstrosity is going to overshadow our great works of art, like the Cathedral of Notre Dame. And now people go all over the world, come from all over the world to see that tower. And it's inspired so many other beautiful pieces of architecture. We have to look for beauty. We have to seek it out. What we're taught is to not be dismissive, to look for that goodness and beauty in everything. Because Jacob marrying Leah, whereas he was very unhappy at first, understandably, it ended up being a good and necessary thing. She had these 6 sons who became patriarchs of 6 of the 12 tribes of Israel. And included in those were Judah and Levi, which are the only 2 tribes today that still remain. So, had this not happened, had he not been forced to find that beauty in Leah and couldn't get beyond the dull eyes, we wouldn't be here today. This gave Jacob the opportunity to grow and find beauty in someone he didn't see it outwardly in. And that's a challenge that we must all undergo and take on in our lives. And hopefully by doing so and seeing more beauty in others, we can create a more beautiful world as well. Shabbat Shalom. Few announcements before we return to our service. I'm supposed to tell you that we're 75% of the way to our high holiday appeal goal. But frankly, who cares, to be honest? Like, okay, we're at 75%. What does that mean? What that means is that we're 75% of the way to where we need to get in order to keep our lights on, to do the social action work, to adopt the Afghan refugee families that our social action committee is undertaking right now, to have exciting intro Judaism courses for people to learn about Judaism and to find their place among the Jewish people, and for us to have a vibrant religious school, and for us to be able to have exciting adult ed, and to be able to have a rabbi and cantor who go and visit people in the hospital when they're sick. That's what we are. We are 75% of the way financially to being able to accomplish those things for yet another year. So we could really need your help so that we can continue to do that, not only this year, but in years to come. Thank you to those of you who have donated to our High Holiday Appeal. And if you haven't yet, we'd be very grateful for your support. One of the great things our community does, too, is a program called Hanukkah for All, which you can also donate to. And that's recognizing that there are people in our communities and seniors, citizens who maybe can't afford gifts for their kids or don't get gifts themselves, and might need a little cheering up and support this Hanukkah. And so we give gift bags to those families, and we'll be grateful for any support you can lend to us to make that happen, so that it's really a special feeling when I get to drive around and deliver those bags. Thank you to everybody who supports that really cool project we do. Likewise, we are through the end of Hanukkah, we are collecting coats for kids and adults and clothing. There's a bin out in the lobby here for us to collect gently used clothing items or new items to be distributed, Jewish Family Service, and some exciting classes that are coming up. We are continuing still our Intro Judaism classes every Thursday evenings. And on November 14th, we have Cantor Brown Levy is going to be teaching her adult and teen trope courses starting this Sunday. Find more info on our website about that. So if you wanted to learn how to chant Torah, really cool thing to do, you can do that. You can learn through her. And on Thursday next week at 6 o'clock, we're going to be having via Zoom a meeting to talk about the work that our community is going to do to help Afghan refugees who are arriving here in Utah, and how we can mobilize our community to support them. There are plenty of other announcements coming up, including a November 21st jam session for musicians age 13 and over. If you want to help lead some of our services with some musical accompaniment, go to that and start working with the cantor so we can do some cool things on Friday nights and Saturdays and holidays. That'll be really cool. And you can check your announcements for plenty more upcoming things, such as our mini Hanukkah activities that are going on, and also a beginner Hebrew class that's going to start in December. And for our guests on your way out, if you could just return your lanyards, we'd be most appreciative. So that's about it. Shabbat Shalom. We are going to return to our service, including part of our service, on page 586 with the Aleinu on the bottom of the page. So please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol l'tekilah l'yotzer breshit shelo asanu kegoyei ha'aratzot velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama shelo sam hilkenu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu Shehu notei shamayim v'yosed haaretz, u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim ima'al, u'shchinatu zo, v'govhei meromim, hu Eloheinu einot, emet malkeinu efes zulato, kakatu v'torato, Idat hayom v'hashivota elevavecha, ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim, b'shamayim ima'al, ve'al ha'aretz, mitachat einot, al keneka ve'lecha Adonai Eloheinu, ve'romeh rabbi tifertuscha, לתקן עולם במלכות שדי, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad. You may be seated. It's hard to sing of oneness when the world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life has gone, and naught but memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were, in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss, for each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world, and each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one, whose life now ended, brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. If you hear the name of a loved one, I invite you to rise upon hearing that name. In the period of Shloshim, 30-day period of mourning, we remember Samuel Warsaw, father of Art Warsaw. And this week, we commemorate the following Yortzites' anniversary passing of these loved ones. Ora Aharonov, Ben Altman, Ben Barron, Helen Elizabeth Bronson, Lorraine Buchalter, Shirley Cohn, Bernice Eisen, Edward Feynman, Philip Goldstein, Maurice Grossi, Harry Gus, Francis J. Halpin, Ida Cohn Hirschman, Edward Hobfall, Andre Jalvat Hukard, Eugene Ireland, Sidney Katz, Sylvia M. Kaufman, Doris Krinsky, Arnold Lesson, Ida Lipson, Herman Bernard Marks, Edith Morris, H.B. Noodleman, Bess Orenstein, Natalie Fast Rosenberg, Mildred Rudnitsky, Frida Solomon, my grandmother Ruth Spector, Shirley Tobin, Michael Weiner, and Sadie Weiser. If you have a name to add when I look in your direction, you're welcome to rise and share that name with our community. And if you're at home and you have a name to share, I invite you to do so as well. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. If you're in mourning or tradition, do so. You are invited to rise. You're on page 598. Yikada, Yikadash, Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma, Divrach, Hirte, V'yamlich Malchute, B'chayechon, Uvyomechon, Ufhaye Dechol, Be'Yisrael, Ba'agala, V'izman Kari, V'imru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mivrach Le'olam Omei Omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemeda kudisha b'richu leila mikol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nehemata dami ram be'alma v'imru amen. Yesh lama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who are mourning, comfort the bereaved among us. Can we say amen? How about we conclude with a song, and it'll be a good song for us to conclude with. Let me find one. I don't see it in here, but how about we'll conclude with Odiavo Shalom Aleinu. Oh, here it is. Bottom of page 657. Odiavo Shalom Aleinu. Odiavo Shalom Aleinu. Odiavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Odiavo Shalom Aleinu. Odiavo Shalom Aleinu. Odiavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Odiavo Shalom Aleinu. Odiavo Shalom Aleinu. Odiavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. And we will do Kiddush and Motzi before going off and enjoying our Shabbat. I'm so glad to begin Shabbat with such good people. It's great to see you all. It really is. I mean that very sincerely. For a little over a year, it was pretty much just me in this room every Friday night. So you have no idea how much joy it brings me to begin my Shabbat with you. Thank you. We are on page 123, and I invite you to rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ava uvratzon hinhilanu zikaron l'maseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehillah Lemikra Kodesh, Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim, Kivanu Vaharta, Ve'otanu Kidashta, Mikol Hamim, Ve'shabbat Kodshecha, Ve'ahava Uvratzon, In hatanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. L'chaim. And we will do the motzi, blessing over the bread. Very nice. Sliced challah, that's nice. So if you want, you can grab it in a piece. That way, we're not all like touching the whole thing and tearing it apart. That's kind of more safe. So join with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lehem min haaretz. B'tei avon Shabbat Shalom. Here you go. You want any of this? That's right. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.